Folks, welcome back to the second ever episode of Brain Bubble with Kyle and Nate on the KCN network. Here, last time we spoke with one of our more recent heroes. This guy, he's worked on some of our favorite projects from childhood. Movies like Tarzan, Brother Bear, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Atlantis: The Lost Empire, as well as many other movies. And now he's joining us from sunny California, Tab Murphy.
Hey guys,
Hey,
happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining
Yeah.
us.
yeah,
My pleasure, my pleasure.
yeah,
Now, Tab, we've shaken you awake at 8 o'clock in the morning. We have some
Yeah.
hard-hitting questions for you.
indeed,
What do I eat for breakfast?
indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle, did you want to start us off with a question of yours?
Sure, yeah. Um, okay, my first, all right, my first question is this. Tab, what, what, what was it like? What was it like for you working, what was it like for you working on the Hunchback of Notre Dame? The reason why I'm leaning with this question is just because honestly, that was the first Disney movie to have a really significant impact on me as a person going on. So I, I, I just gotta know, and I know the good folks out in the world probably want to know this as well. So yeah.
Well, what was it like working on a Hunchback? It was a very different experience from what I was used to because I was coming from the world of live action. I was, I had always dreamed of writing live action movies, and in those days, I was really focused on wanting to direct. I'd written a script that I wanted to direct, and I was trying to get that off the ground. So, in point of fact, I kind of resisted, Disney's early overtures to come in and see if there was anything that we could find to do together. And they were reaching out to me because I had actually written the first job ever I got in Hollywood was writing a movie that never got made for Eddie Murphy at Paramount Studios. So those executives had gravitated over to Disney in the few years since I'd worked with them, but I'd made some relationships, and they were reaching out to me because especially Jeffrey Katzenberg had taken over the animation division at Disney, and he was reaching out to writers he knew or he'd worked with or he liked to have them come in and begin, early stages of development of some of their ideas in terms of taking more of a live action writing approach to those ideas, which would be outlines, treatments, and then eventually a screenplay. So I was just one of those writers they were reaching out to, and you know, uh, in all honesty, I kept saying no because I was busy with what I was in my lane, in my focused lane of trying to get a movie made that I wanted to direct, and also, quite frankly, I mean, like stupidly, I was. I thought I don't want to write cartoons. I don't want to write little, cartoon movies for kids, little kids. I just not something I was interested in.
Mhm.
And Little Mermaid had just come out, and so the true sort of renaissance of Disney animation in the '90s was just getting started, right? And then a couple of things happened. I got my movie financed, and was able to. We got a star, but he had like two other movies to do before he could do ours. And and I was, speaking of Jackson Hole, I remember I was living in Jackson Hole at the time, and Beauty and the Beast got released, and I thought, I should just go watch it, even though it's a kids movie. Um, and so I dragged a buddy of mine to see it, and I remember watching that movie, going, "Holy shit! I mean, this is way different than I thought it was going to be. This is really sophisticated, great storytelling, great art. I mean, like it all came together, and I love Beauty and the Beast." And I thought, wow. I mean, I hadn't been to an animated movie, probably like a Disney animated movie, since I was a kid, you know. So I was kind of knocked out. And right around that time, Disney came back again and said, "Hey, we'd love to find something to do with. We want you to come in and see what we're doing." Jeffrey was like through his executives, and so I finally said, "Okay, I got this window. I got to pay my bills. So why don't I just get over myself and get in there and see what they're working on?" And I did. And so in that meeting, I remember they were developing a lot of projects like Hercules and a lot of the movies that ultimately got made in the '90s. And one of the things toward the end of the meeting, and I wasn't finding anything, I wasn't hearing anything that really grabbed me that I thought, oh, I could do. I mean, I could really do this. And then toward the end of the meeting, they said, "Oh, and by the way, we're trying to find something to do with this." And this turned out to be Victor Hugo's Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, what they didn't know was that I was a total monster kid of the '60s. I grew up in the '60s, and I collected famous monsters of filmland. I loved monster movies. I loved all the Universal horror movies, all the Hammer movies, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. I was just that was like, oh. So when they what and I knew the story of the Hunchback from those days because in those days the Hunchback was kind of lumped in with all the other Universal monsters. They even though he wasn't really a monster, he was a human and he was deformed, but he still, the Aurora models of the '60s. It was Hunchback, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, all those. So I knew that story, and when they threw that book on the table, I was like, I mean, immediately I said, I'm in. I mean, like, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. This is awesome. And then I kind of like had this moment where I thought, oh shit, because I knew that story. I knew all of the pathos of that story. I knew that it was a story about unrequited love. I knew it was a tragedy. I knew all these things. And then I thought in my brain, wait a minute, are they going to turn this into like, singing and dancing animals and Quasimodo's like,
Yeah.
like a little hump the size of a pimple on his back, and he's just like out there doing. I thought I can't do that, man. There was
Well,
this moment where I was really nervous about it, but to Disney's credit, they were really cool, man. They were really cool. They said,
yeah.
Yeah.
get it. We know what the material is. We know that it's adult. We know that there's a lot. We just want you to see if you can find out if there's a Disney animated movie in there, and we don't want you to censor yourself. I remember them specifically saying, "Look, don't censor you. Don't you let us worry about our brand. You just worry about bringing us a great story that could make an
Mm.
animated movie. Uh, and if you go too far, we'll obviously we'll pull back and this and that."
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, I was impressed with their, sort of a desire to embrace something a little different than what they'd been doing up to then. And I
Mm.
thought, wow, this is cool. I mean, maybe this could end up being really something special. So that's, that was how I ended up doing Hunchback. And then part two of your question, and I'm sorry for taking so long to answer it, but
You're
the
fine. You're fine.
process of writing an animated feature, very different than
Mm.
live action.
Oh,
Mm.
yes.
So, and what was it like to work on Hunchback? It was a completely new experience for me as a writer because they don't like in live action. You go in, you have a few meetings, you might do an outline, but everybody kind of agrees on the movie, and then you go away and write it. Well,
Mm.
in animation, it's completely different. I mean, they
Mm.
start from ground zero and they start with outlines and then they start with treatments. They move on to treatments and those get expanded and characters. So I'd never written so much on one project in my life. I mean, like
Yeah.
reams and reams of like, fuck. I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. But it was great because ultimately it was not only did I get to work on a cool movie with a lot of great, creatively talented, amazing people, starting with producer Don Hahn and the directors Kirk and Gary, and then all the way through the artists, the board artists, the designers, like just amazing people. Um, but my tenure at Disney, over the next 10 years, was the greatest like screenwriting school I'd ever been to,
Yeah.
because I didn't have any formal training as a writer. I basically, like took one class at USC and then thought, okay, I'm going to give this a go. So working at Disney in those 10 years really taught me a lot about screenwriting, and really taught me a lot about storytelling and about, sort of heroes' journeys and all of the stuff that a lot of people sort of seek out in screenwriting courses, which I've never
Mm,
had. So it was great. I had the best time, and it was really one of those moments when I look back now and go, "Boy, you almost fucked it up, Tab, because you almost didn't go in for that meeting." You know what
Oh,
I mean?
well,
So
it's
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes things can just turn on a dime, like in a weird
True,
way, and
true,
so
true. Yeah,
thank God I did go in for that meeting, because that became a huge part of my career. You know?
yeah.
Yeah, well, what that's such a. It's interesting that you had a. It was so opportune for you to start working in animation in that Disney Renaissance period, when it kind of works in what your interests already were, of being able to
Hmm.
transfer from live action to something like Hunchback or Tarzan that are a little more grounded and not as like merry melodies as a lot of the earlier stuff
Yeah,
was. And
yeah.
I had that's something one of my questions related to. It was if you had been able to, let's say, like what era of filmmaking would you have wanted to have started your career in? Because I was trying to think of like in the 50s and 60s, Disney had more live action stuff like that, like the Swiss Family Robinson movie. Or I was thinking because I read that you had an interest in like Native American indigenous peoples stories, things like
Yeah,
that. Something like a Davy Crockett or those early
yeah.
stories about that kind of thing.
Well, those were all influences of mine. Uh, of course. I mean, and frankly, jumping ahead a little bit, when we all gathered to kind of cook up Atlantis: The Lost Empire, we all sort of pointed to a lot of those movies we grew up, Disney and non-Disney alike, that were sort of boys' own adventures and things like
Yeah.
that, and that's what became Atlantis: The Lost Empire for us. But I would say, if to directly answer your question, what era of filmmaking, even though I had all of that as a background as a kid, I would say the 70s, the early
Oh,
70s
okay.
was my era of filmmaking, because that was, I was, like I was in high school. I graduated into high school in 75. So all through the early 70s, I was in like sort of like junior high into high school. But I went to a lot of movies. I was lucky enough to have parents that were sort of more open minded about what they were willing to, and I was the oldest of five that I could be exposed to. For instance, my parents took me to see The Godfather in 1972. I was
Wow.
years old.
Oh, well, perfect.
Okay, and I don't know, and I'll never forget. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but
Yes.
it's
Oh yeah,
a
it's a
seminal
classic.
film classic, that
Yeah.
just still to this day is as powerful and evocative as it was when I saw it. So I'm sitting in the theater between my parents. I'm 15 years old. I'm watching The Godfather, and you know, and here comes James Caan at the causeway, and he just gets blown to bits. My parents
Oh
like,
my gosh.
"Oh, this is awesome. This is cool." And then then Michael Corleone goes to Italy. He gets married, and on his wedding night, they have this shot, and his wife takes her top off, and there's bare breasts. And my mom, I just seized up and was like, "Oh my God!" And everything, but put her hand over my eyes.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
think they. I think they thought, "Oh, it's a gangster movie. Well, it's fine." Like violence is fine,
Oh man.
but God forbid bare breasts
Mm.
my 15-year-old son should see. So anyway, but and then from then, I mean, I went to a lot of that was that moment in The Godfather where my mom freaked out was second only to the moment when I convinced my parents to take me to see Deliverance, and my mom's like, "What's it about?" "Oh, it's about some guys
Oh
who go camping
no.
for a weekend."
Oh
Oh.
no.
Okay, okay. And I said, "Can I bring a few of my friends whose parents would not let them go?"
Oh.
And they
Oh
and they said,
no.
"Sure, bring your friends."
Oh
And so we're
no.
sitting there, And that famous scene, like Squeal Like a Pig
Oh.
comes on, and both my parents seized up in that moment, and they were like, and my mom leaned over and said, "Oh my God, I'm never trusting you again." And we
Oh
were just
no.
like watching it going, "Holy shit." But so that was, I
Hmm.
had such a great education of what was, like and I got to see all these great movies on the big screen, and oftentimes alone, because I would go to movies alone. And I was lucky
Mhm.
enough to have a friend in high school. I was a junior, and I think she was a senior or something, or maybe a junior. But she worked the box office, so I would come up, these R-rated movies, and I'm like 15 or whatever, and she'd like sell me a ticket, go get in, like so. I got in to see a lot of stuff I shouldn't have seen probably,
Oh my
but it was
goodness.
great. It was great. It was awesome, man.
Yeah, well, that seems like a very that's sort of a necessary formative experience. I think if you're going to
Yeah.
get into
Oh yeah.
movies at all, is to sneak something
Definitely.
past your parents
Hmm.
or have something in what Disney Renaissance movies became was to have a sugar coating around something that you were sneaking in there, something with some darker
Yeah,
themes,
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
For
Well,
sure.
yeah, and of
having a
course my
vehicle.
parents. Yeah, my parents were like, they didn't read reviews and things like that, so they sort of trusted me, and they knew I was a movie kind of nut because as a kid growing up, I mean, but in those days, of course, it was all monster movies. I just couldn't get enough, and I would, they had every Friday night out of Seattle, they had something called Nightmare Theater, and I grew up in Olympia, Washington, so we got the Seattle feed, and it would come on at 11:30 at night after the late news, a half hour late news.
Yeah.
And I would beg. And my dad was in the Air Force a lot, so he was gone a lot. So a lot of times I would be left begging my mother, please, can I just stay up and watch Nightmare Theater? And, once in a while she'd let me, and it was just awesome, like, so, alone at night, all the lights low, watching whatever, The Thing, or some of those great monster movies of the past. That was just, to me, that was nirvana, back in those
Yeah.
days.
And
Nice, nice.
in anything you've written, have you ever tried to capture that feeling you've had of watching chillers late at night, of like the relief of getting your mom to let you stay up late to watch a scary movie, and then the feeling
Yeah,
of
yeah.
having the flicker of the TV on your pitch black curtains,
No, no, no. That was
popcorn
it. It
spilled
was
all over the floor. Have you ever written anything where you're trying to get that feeling?
not well, not necessarily specifically that. I mean, I think that would be sort of a nostalgia,
Hmm.
themed movie. And I did the other thing I went to, and I had an idea for a while that I wanted to write a movie about drive-in theaters because a lot of my experiences happen at drive-in theaters too.
Okay.
Movie, life, whatever, and I always thought, drive-ins, were such a special place. It's such a weird way to watch movies, but such a interesting, sort of like cultural, you know, period. Um, but no, and not really. I mean, but I did take, what I did take out of that is just my excitement, my passion, and and I don't know where it came from or how to describe it even, but just the combination of watching those movies and then having that magazine, which I know if you're familiar with, but
No, I know it.
Yeah, yeah,
Famous
yeah.
Monsters. Okay, so in the
Yeah.
'60s, Forrest J. Ackman was an editor of a magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland. What was great about that magazine is that he, sort of like pulled aside the veil of just what the movie was about, and they had articles on the stars of those movies, Bela Lugosi, Frankenstein, Jack Pierce, who did the makeup for Frankenstein. So I was getting immersed in all of this behind the scenes of this is how you do it. This is how you put a movie together, in addition to the movies themselves. And I think that really sort of informed my I don't know, just my passion for wanting to know more, and then how stories are put together, and like it all sort of informed later my decision not to become a forest ranger, but to go to Hollywood and try to break into the movie business. So
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice. That's really interesting.
Kyle, how about you? What do you think?
Uh, what do I think? I don't know. Thinking gets me in trouble. That's why I'm married. But no, 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 no. No, that's really interesting. To reflect on. all those experiences and how that kind of motivated your drive to,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, I teach a lot of classes, Kyle, and screenwriting, and I talk to a lot of people about my particular journey. But it's my journey. Like that's my journey. You could pull 10 other screenwriters or directors, and they all have. There's probably similarities in there, but everybody has their own path to
yeah,
how they find
yeah,
their way to what
Yeah.
they're
oh yeah,
ultimately are going
for sure,
to do, and that was just my path.
uh,
So
Yeah. Well, I had a question. I remember finding out that you did teach those classes for you, for students that you teach or other people you work with. Uh, what today have you noticed have been a lot of younger writers or younger aspiring writers natural education, the way that monster movies and seeing drive R-rated driving movies were for you?
Nate, you took my question. How dare you?
Yeah, well, see, we have the
well,
mind meld here.
yeah,
Yes, we are.
I. It's funny. I mean, uh, eh, this generation coming up. I'll tell you what I find sort of interesting about this generation coming up when I am speaking to them and talking to them about stories and this and that and what they're writing and all that stuff. Like I came up and in the 70s when sort of like I started seeing movies and there was like a gritty realism that overtook Hollywood, especially in with movies like Mean Streets and Scorsese and then adventure with Jaws with Spielberg and Close Encounters, and then De Palma had the sort of the mystery thriller genre locked in, early, and Coppola, of course, with Apocalypse Now, and he had. But I found that I was always sort of initially drawn more to genre because of those are the movies I loved growing up. I find today a lot of people, a lot of young or new writers don't really write genre. They kind of write, you know, angst and they kind of write like more what I would call, or they spend time trying to tell stories that are more what in the old days would be like indie or still
Mm,
indie movies,
mm,
Okay.
like,
mm.
trying to tell their story or what like so it's that's to me is a big difference because I don't see new writers. I mean, like some people are trying horror movies, but they're always, But I don't see anybody writing westerns or war movies or this or that.
Mm,
All the stuff that
mm,
was open to me when I broke in the early '80s because we
yeah,
were only 20 years removed from the '60s.
yeah,
And Hollywood was still making a lot of genre stuff in those days, but it
mm,
was evolving. But
mm,
so that's, I mean, I think, but there's also a large part of this generation that is writing fantasy too. Fantasy, just like, and I don't know if that's because of the Harry Potter. We're all raised on Harry Potter, and now they're embracing all these new ideas. But fantasy, sci-fi, I see a lot of that, but
yeah,
grounded sci-fi, not Star Wars sci-fi,
Yeah.
but
yeah,
interesting ideas that would be considered sci-fi.
yeah,
So that's what I see a lot of these days.
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. That's
Yeah, no, listen,
fascinating.
good storytelling is good storytelling, right?
Yeah,
So it doesn't
for
really
sure.
matter. But I think that,
Mm.
what I encourage, because everybody gets a little daunted by, oh, what genre? And that story's been told already. And all that. I said, yeah, every story's been fucking told already.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
six
Every
IDs.
yeah.
story has. So here's what you do. You pick a genre, you pick a kind of an idea. Every zombie movie you can think of has been made, yet they still continue to get made. And so how do you do that? How do you break? Well, you pick something that's a macro idea and you go micro with it. You tell it much more personally. I just saw a trailer for Jordan Peele's next movie, which is about an alien invasion. You go out and say, I want to do a movie about an alien invasion, and everybody goes, get the fuck out of here. But
Ain't that
you,
the
but
truth?
what you say is, but here's my spin on that movie.
Yeah,
A black family trying to make a go of it, and we're just going to stay with them on that one night that things go haywire and blah blah blah.
yeah,
And then you go, okay, there's a way in. It's a genre movie, but there's a way in we haven't seen
yeah,
before, something like that.
yeah,
So that's what I tell my students. I said, take a genre, take this, that. You can write a zombie movie. What's your interesting micro take on a zombie movie, right?
Yeah, what's your
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you can't do a zombie movie. Well, I got all these zombies coming around, killing and eating people, dude. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
What's
put
your take on that?
put
You
your
know?
twist on it.
yeah, they got to be
Yeah,
zombie wizards. Come
exactly.
on.
Yeah.
So I got this idea
Oh,
about.
that's
I got
hey,
this idea that I would rather hear something like this. I want to do a mashup like a zombie movie with Fantastic Voyage. They've captured a zombie and they shrink this team down. And they put him in a submarine. They put him in his bloodstream, and he goes in. They go in the bloodstream to try to figure out what the fuck makes these things tick, and all these things attack it. There's this, because it's a zombie. I'm like, dude, write that fucking
Oh
thing.
man,
Okay.
that sounds fabulous.
even better. Well, I was thinking.
Oh, yeah,
Speaking
yeah.
of, I'm sorry, what?
Well, it's just I was about to be like, Nate, you've had the last few questions. Could I at least have another
No, I was trying to bat it back to you.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was asking.
I'm sorry. I didn't know what you were trying to do. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Oh,
Yes, yeah.
silence.
No, that was me.
Okay,
That was
okay,
also
okay,
my clever
okay,
attempts,
okay,
my genius interviewing
I,
skills, trying to send it back to
okay.
you.
All right, okay. Um, okay. So, all right. Um, okay. I noticed on the Atlantis the Last Empire Facebook page. I noticed you interact a lot with a lot of fans and whatnot.
yeah, I do.
And I admire.
I have a good time.
I'm not gonna lie. I admire that quite a bit, just because seriously, like you have no idea how many celebrities and people like set up pages and they don't even interact with people who put them there in the first place and whatnot and stuff. So
Well, I'll tell you,
I just gotta say
Kyle.
it's
Here's
refreshing to see
here's
that.
the big misconception, Kyle. They think I'm a celebrity. I'm not a fucking celebrity. I'm a writer, dude. Okay, I don't give a like I'm not an actor. I don't have a huge ego. I'm grateful that people that I was able to like write some movies that had an effect on people. To me, that's like gold. As a writer, you want a lot of, especially in screenwriting, you can write your entire career and never get movies made. You can make a fairly decent living, but it's really tough to get movies made. So I feel very fortunate that in the 90s and into the early 2000s, I had that 10 years where everything I worked on got made at Disney. I worked on 4 movies and they all got made, and I felt very fortunate and lucky to be in that situation because that is so hard to do, dude. It's just so hard to do.
Hmm.
So, and not only did those movies get made, but so we're talking about a time in the 90s. So I was a lot younger and I was starting a family and had kids and things like that. And you move on and you go through different chapters of your life, just as you go through different chapters of your career. And so, as much as I was proud of those movies, I kind of, I hadn't forgotten about them, but they were tucked away back, in my subconscious, more or less. And I was, busy working on other things. So one of the things that I just was not aware of in with regard to those movies was, and as people like yourselves came of age in their 20s that grew up on those movies, that they still resonated. They were still important sort of parts, cornerstones of your childhoods. Whether it was young girls fixating on Esmeralda or Kita, the strong female characters but I just didn't realize that there were such fans of those movies out there in that way. And that's why I felt when I found out about Atlantis, the Lost Empire posting, and some of these other sites, I just thought, you know what? I mean, there is such a thirst for wanting to know everything about those movies, and I could see that by reading the comments and this and that. So I just thought, what the fuck, man? I'll let them know. Why not? I mean, I don't have anything to protect. Like, oh, I'm a big star. I better not talk to these people. Then, you know, I was like happy to share process. Here's what we were thinking when we made this, and they were just eating. They ate it up. They ate it up, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was their age, or even in my 20s or even younger, I had a terrible thirst too, but there was nothing like the internet back in those days. There was no way to find out, aside from my famous Monsters of Filmland, there was no way to find out more about the movies I loved. How did they do that? How did they make, how did they, like, there was no answers. So and I was such a film geek and nerd, and I wanted to know all those things. And so it was a great opportunity for me over the last 3 years, especially with the pandemic and everybody sort of locked in, to reach out and begin to, just answer questions or make posts and say, hey, or show pages that I'd written, like very early in the process of creating Atlantis Lafayette. People ate that shit up, man, and I don't blame them. I was just very happy to be able to provide that. So that's, but I'm no celebrity, dude. No, I'm no celebrity.
Well, here's the thing. You may not see yourself as a celebrity, but you know what? I can honestly say to me and Nate, and also dozens upon dozens of other people, you're definitely, an inspiration and a hero to quite a few people.
Well, I appreciate that. Inspiration is great because I mean, listen, I had filmmakers that inspired me. I mean, I didn't have access to them back in the day. I didn't, Spielberg didn't, even though you know, but I couldn't, hold a conversation with any of these people that I would have given my eye teeth to just, be in the same room with and just pick their brain and, like, but inspiration is very important. It's important for all of us in our lives, whether we're creatives or not. I mean, we want to be inspired by people that have come before, whether they were teachers, whether they're our parents or whatever. I mean, like, so, yeah, no, that part I do. I mean, it's like I was with Jess in a bar not too long ago, and we were, just having a drink, I think, and at the bar, and there were people at the bar. And so I got up to go to the restroom. So I come back, and she's in an intense conversation with the guy that was sitting on my left. And of course, my immediate reaction is, "The fuck is she talking to that dude for?" No,
I'll kill you.
yeah, yeah. Like, but what had happened in the time that I had gone to the restroom is that she had overheard these two guys sitting on our left talking about Hunchback and how this guy directly on my left was saying that movie was the most important movie of my childhood because it made me realize that I wasn't alone in the feelings I had about being an outcast and this and that and all this stuff. So as I came back from the restroom, she leaned over and said, was talking to him. And she said, and as I walk up, she goes, well, I overheard you talking about the Hunchback. And he said, yeah. And he turned like, yeah. And he's like, she said, well, this guy right here, as I was walking up, he wrote it. And the guy just about hit his pants.
Oh my gosh.
It was awesome. He's like, oh my God. I had to sit down. He had to tell me all about it. He bought me a drink. And I gave him a hug. And it was just like, wow. I mean, I never, that.
Well, that's got to be amazing. Right. That's got to be the main reason to write Disney movies is to get free drinks.
Yeah.
When your audience is just old enough to buy a drink, it's like, hey, have you seen Brother Bear?
Yeah, I think I probably got a few thousand drink credits already. But the other thing that's really cool, I mean, that has emerged. You guys probably know I send posters. Like that was one of the things I did. I just started doing, because I just thought I wanted to give back to the fans, and I didn't want them to pay for anything, and I just wanted to do it, and it was fun to do it. It kind of in the pandemic, in between my, like working on my own stuff, I just thought this is fun. I'll do this, and it became a thing. But dude, I ended up sending fucking posters all over the world, man. And that's one of the things I forgot about the Disney brand. It is worldwide. I sent posters to South America, Mexico, Iceland, Europe, all over, everywhere. It was unbelievable and still is unbelievable, not to mention every state of the union, So it really was a wake up call to me in terms of just how far reaching these movies really, the effect they had. It's not just endemic to us here in North America, all over the world, people. So
Mhm.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is I could go around the world and never have to buy another beer in my life, dude.
Yeah, you're pretty much set for life. No, that's awesome.
No, I'm joking
That's
about that, but it's true. I mean, people are so grateful. They're so cool. They're so fun.
Mhm.
And that's the other part of it. You know, I mean, I've heard horror stories about fan groups and, like, I don't know, just,
People being
but
rabid. Yeah.
for whatever reason, the Disney fan groups, especially, those movies meant something to them at a pivotal time in their development, whether they were young or even a little older.
Mhm.
And that's something that they look back on the same way I look back on, watching Jaws for the first time in a theater, right?
Mhm.
And having that movie, like seeing it like brand new, like nothing like this before, and I'm just walking out going, "Holy shit, that was I got to be a part of that. That was just unbelievable."
Yeah.
So so I appreciate that. I appreciate that that I was fortunate enough to work on those movies along with many other, believe me. That's the other thing too. It's like I always kind of have to remind everybody, I appreciate the accolades, but it wasn't me, just me. There's like
Mhm.
300 extremely talented, some way more talented than me, working on those movies to bring them to life to everybody. But anyway, if I'm out there as the spokesman for all of those artists working on it at times, that's okay too. So
Mhm.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Well,
that's fabulous.
yeah. Speaking of early inspiration and of like younger and sort of younger people being involved in this and new projects, I just watched the I just watched the YouTube pitch for Galaxy Gas very recently. Yeah,
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah, there you
what's
go.
that looked
Galaxy
like it's
Gas?
a very for people who don't know it is a it was pitched by Tab Murphy and Kirk Wise. It's a science fiction movie about a half Native American boy in a teenage boy in an area who works as his dad's corner like a gas station in the desert, and
Old
an
school,
alien
old
crash
school.
landed there.
Mhm.
What?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness, that
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
so
it's very
crazy.
cool. Actually, I'll just give you an update on that. We try to get that as an animated feature for years and years, and now we've decided to try to shop it as a series. So in fact, Walden Media sort of picked it up and is our partner, and I will be, sitting down with Kirk uh, and Craig in the not too distant future. We're bringing aboard we're looking for a native writer slash showrunner to help us. I mean, these days in Hollywood, you know, with the emphasis on diversity, it would be stupid for us not to, sort of like bring somebody aboard with an
Yeah,
authentic voice.
yeah.
Uh, Even though, Nate mentioned that my interest in Native American culture and goes way back, way back.
Good.
But be that as it may. So anyway, it's still alive. We're out there, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a fun project.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
that
It looked well. I love that style specifically. The 50s like neon Tesco sign with science
Yeah,
fiction. It made me think of Lilo and Stitch a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No,
you
exactly.
know.
And I think totally that we want to keep the art design. We want to keep a lot of that stuff. It's just kind of that nostalgic throwback. In the old days, Texaco used to be the gas station where the attendants would dress up in their white suits and little hats. And
Oh
when you went into the
gosh.
gas station in those days, it was like now you go in and like it's everything self-serve and there's
yeah.
nobody around.
Mhm.
But in
No,
those days, I mean, people took pride in their gas stations. The owners did, and they. So we had a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun with that one for sure.
oh, that sounds really interesting. I think when we wrap this up, I think I'll look for the trailer or something because that sounds
Oh
really
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
you'll see.
Oh no, I plan on sending it to you. It's the kind of thing I didn't grow up with those like older like drive-in movies specifically, or something or anything that resembled it that closely. But I had things that were in reference to it. So like Lilo and Stitch, very
Hmm.
much because it's set in Hawaii, so it has
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
it has that it has like a lot of older stuff in it too,
Hmm.
where it's not it wasn't it, you can't really figure out what era it is, and something seemed kind of anachronistic. Go
Hmm.
figure, a movie with a bunch of aliens in it has weird
Yeah,
stuff, but
yeah,
you get what I mean, where it's
yeah,
more
yeah,
like
yeah.
a
Yeah, I even wrote the drive-in scene in Galaxy Gas. The features.
What?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, it's the our lead is trying to impress a girl, so
Mm,
he uh, he takes her to the drive-in movie that's been abandoned for years, but the his little alien sidekicks are in the the projection booth trying to
oh
figure it
my
out, and they're
gosh. Oh my
and he's
gosh.
showing her a 50s sci-fi movie, and they're
Oh,
just having a ball with popcorn and stuff. Then because the film's old, the nitrate catches fire and they have to all flee. But
oh
it's
gosh. That sounds like that sounds like a moment out of Gremlins or something.
yeah, yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. That script still is a lot of fun, but it's also a good litmus test in terms of people wanting to be writers and thinking, oh, I just come in, I'll write a great script, I'll get a movie made. Of how difficult it truly is. I mean,
Mm,
we all had a great script. Kirk was going to direct, and we just couldn't get it sold as a feature. So that's more often than not the case, and you just have
yeah.
to sort of accept that going in, that this is going to be the hardest fucking thing I've ever uh, attempted
Mhm.
in terms of like becoming a screenwriter, writing something that gets made, and having my name sitting in the audience and seeing my name on the big screen. Just it's very difficult, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Wow.
I mean, a lot of people, I would never quash anybody's dreams because thank God, like when I went to, I mentioned being, becoming a forest ranger, and I went to Washington State University out of high school in Olympia, Washington. You either went to the University of Washington and were a bulldog, a dog, or you went
Mhm.
across the state to the Washington State University and were a cougar. And I thought, well, cougars are cooler than bulldogs. I'm going to Washington State University. And and in those days, I really felt like I wanted a career in the outdoors. I mean, as much as I love movies and all that stuff, but I just never like thought I never thought that I could come from a small town and do that. So my focus was like, okay, a career in the outdoors. Maybe I can be a forest ranger, maybe I work in the mountains somehow. But shortly, into my first year at university there, I realized, oh man, this just is not what I thought it was going to be. It was
oh,
way different. I mean, like so. So I had this epiphany, and I remember looking in the mirror in my dorm room, saying, "What do you really want to do? Just be honest. What's your first thing that comes to your mind?" And the first thing that came to my mind, and that I uttered was, "I want to go to Hollywood and get in the movie business." And I was like, "Holy shit!" So I finally, like in that moment, was true. I mean, I told the truth to myself about what I really wanted, even though it seemed scary and like I had no reference at all. But I mean, I just thought, okay, if you don't do this, dude, you're gonna look back someday, and you're gonna look back and go, why the fuck didn't I do that? And I think I took that cue from my dad, who had, he was from a smaller town than I grew up in, and he had been accepted to Notre Dame University, and
Wow.
he wanted to go in the worst possible way, and he just wanted to go, and he was going to go. He wanted, and then all of a sudden he got drafted by the service, and that
Mm.
sort of quashed that moment for him. And then for years and years, as a kid growing up, every Saturday he would watch the highlights of the Notre Dame football team. He had like, and he would just do it religiously. And I thought to myself, well, he's just sitting there watching that game, going, probably thinking, if I'd only gone to Notre Dame, I wonder what my life would have been like. I didn't want to, like, and nothing against my dad. I mean, he had ended up having a terrific, career in life, but I just didn't want to be sitting somewhere in my 40s watching a movie, going, "Fuck, I wish I could have been a part of that." You know what I
Wondering
mean?
what could have been, right?
Yeah. So I did it. I transferred to USC Film School, and I just got on a plane when I was 19 and I flew to LA. I didn't know a fucking soul, but I just knew if I didn't do this and get over my fear of it, that an opportunity was gonna pass me by. So anyway, it's just if there's a message in there for anyone out there listening to this, uh, you know, and by the way, the most
Mhm.
important thing in that
Mhm.
decision is when I called my folks from university and said, "Hey, this isn't working out over here. I don't think I want to do this here. I don't want to do this." And they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And when I said I want to go to Hollywood and get in the movie business, there was like fucking dead silence on the phone, right? But to their credit, they were like, "Well, we don't know anything about that, but if that's what you want to do, you need to go for it. You need to do that. We'll help you, but we have no, like that's like you might as well say you're going to Mars and you want to terraform and become an alien. We have
Yeah.
no reference for that." But my point being that a lot of well-meaning parents, I think, sometimes because they're concerned and they're fearful for their kids, and they can talk somebody out of their dreams. Yeah, you know what? I don't know. We don't know about Hollywood. That sounds so far away, and so maybe you should just here's an idea. Why don't you just stay in school and at least get your degree so you have a fallback and safety net and blah blah blah. And then if you really still want to, and then in that moment, well-meaning parents can kill a dream if it's not just full on support.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate that my parents didn't take the tact of trying to talk me out of it because I probably was on the edge of like, should I not? I might have listened to them. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that was an important. But anyway, to anybody out there listening, don't give up on your dream until it's time to give up on your dream, because
Yeah.
your dream has to be
Yeah.
realistic too.
Yeah.
Your dream has to be realistic. I mean, so I had always loved writing, and I had gotten signals, whether they were overt or just subconscious signals from teachers, like, wow, you really are, and I hadn't really listened to them, but I liked, of course, I liked, oh, I got an A, way, but
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I mean, your dreams have to be somewhat realistic and reachable. Anyway, that's a story for another time.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's we're nearing the end of this interview here. But
Awesome.
as far as dreams go, what are besides the tentative galaxy gas, which
Yeah,
we'll put the link to it in we'll put the link to
Yeah.
the animated pitch in the description below. Is
Yeah.
there anything else
We'll
you'd
do
like to
that.
talk about that that is a dream that's down the line, maybe?
Yeah.
oh, well, I just adapted a book called Astoria by Peter Stark as a pilot for a potential series. I'm a big history nut,
Mhm.
so this
Mhm.
is a great story of America's destiny that nobody knows about. Everybody remembers Lewis and Clark crossing
Yeah.
the continent, but 6 or 7 years later, there was another crossing of, you know, uh, that was the brain child of John Jacob Astor, who was a big fur trader magnate, lived in New York. He was what would today be considered a billionaire, and he had this idea of establishing a post at the mouth of the Columbia River on the far west coast. And you got Thomas Jefferson just give the thumbs up because there was no settlement out there. There was America's frontier was wide open to anybody who would grab it, including Britain or Canada, anybody. And so he really wanted to establish a post at the mouth of the Columbia. And John Jacob Astor saw that he could, by establishing that post, not only sort of ensure democracy and the settlement of the west coast of America, for the United States, but he envisioned this big trade empire reaching from China to Alaska. Anyway, that's the big kind of picture. But the two groups that he sent, one overland and one around Cape Horn, the fucking disaster, man. It's like the Revenant times 10. It just
Whoa.
it was
Man.
awesome. It's a great story. And so I wrote a pilot. So yeah, check that book out. It's a lot of fun. That's one. I'm 65 years old. I've been doing this for 40 years. And I woke up the other day going, God, I got a lot of stories left to tell. So I ain't going anywhere, pal.
No, that's great. It's great that you still have that drive and that passion to, keep
Well,
going and
Yeah.
whatnot.
well,
No, it's yeah. Go ahead.
it's fantastic news. It's we hope your burgeoning career goes well. Keep at it.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like
And
I'm just
man,
starting out. After 40 years, I feel like I'm just starting out again.
yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, we want to thank you for coming on the show
Yes,
and for
yes,
this interview. We really appreciate it.
yeah,
My
for
pleasure,
sure,
guys.
for sure.
Anytime. It's been a blast. I enjoy talking about. A lot of people don't get a chance to reflect over things like this, or times in their career or their lives. So I appreciate the opportunity. I really do.
And hey, Tab, just so you know, at some point in the future, Nate and I may or may not bump into you in a bar somewhere, and we may or may not ask you to buy us beer.
Yeah.
I'm always
Only. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
always up for cold beer. Well, and we spend a lot of time, Jess and I, up in Jackson Hole, so that's a little closer to Boise than L.A.
Yeah.
You hear that, Nate? We gotta go to Jackson Hole.
Yeah. Well, we got to tell you, we only have meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning. So you better be ready for beers, ice cold, 8 o'clock sharp.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We may have to reverse that. 8 o'clock at night one of these times.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
My
thank you for
pleasure,
listening.
guys. It's been a hoot. I appreciate the opportunity, as I said, and best of luck with the podcast. And let me know when you got her up and running.
Yeah, thank
Oh
you.
yeah, for sure. We'll definitely send you the link once all the 11
Okay.
car's gone to the editing and stuff. And yeah.
Kyle, would you like to sign
Outstanding.
us off?
Yes, I would. To all you folks, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe to us. Let us know what you thought about this down in the comments below. And if you guys have anything you would like to say or ask our wonderful guest Tab Murphy, we will put a link to the Atlantis The Last Empire page down in the description below.
Hey, thank you much. We'll see you next time, folks.
Bye.